Gary,
Mark.
really nice to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on to Hive Talking. Really appreciate it. Look, there's a lot to talk about, particularly around the digital era that we seem to be in now.
Yep.
And it strikes me from a business point of view, over the last, maybe 10 years, but probably 5 years, broadband has become a business critical thing, not just a nice to have. That must have impacted on your business of Connexin a great deal.
Hugely, yeah. I think you could probably go back even further than that, Mark, to be honest with you.
Okay.
My own thoughts are when the World Wide Web was introduced and many years ago, I think it stemmed from there that the need, I suppose, for connectivity began then, I suppose. And we live in a world which, I know we have borders with different countries, but you look at the internet, there is no borders, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose it's a global thing now that you look at a business that we can talk to people from the other side of the world, whether that's via Zoom or whatever it's going to be. And so it's a fascinating, I suppose, era that we've seen. Yes, I think over definitely the last 5 years, I would say that you've seen things escalate, you know, especially with the likes of AI, what everybody seems to be talking about these days.
Yeah, well, that's a big problem. And you know, that it is amazing because you were saying it goes back further and you've made me think, you know, I am quite old. And so I remember,
Me too.
I remember someone coming up to me and saying, we're talking to somebody in America live on text. And this was in the era where you paid for every bit of text that you sent. So it was quite amazing. I thought, no, surely that's going to cost us a lot of money.
Yeah.
No, it's and it's live and it's free and I was fascinated by that. Just seeing the text appearing as they were typing.
Yeah.
Now, and that must have been about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And now here we are. That's archaic.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, and I suppose that's one of the reasons why Connexin was set up in the first place with Alex and Fakan.
Yeah.
They went away on a boys' holiday. They came back with a huge phone bill and phone calls and text messages, and thought, "Crikey, how can this be? What's all this about?" And it started their minds thinking in terms of that, really.
Oh, is that where it started?
That's how it started. Yeah, whenever I present on behalf of Connexin, I say it all starts from a small bedroom. Everybody starts worrying and think, but obviously when I kind of expand really on that story, I suppose really it was initially a bedroom project, but stemming from a bit of a huge phone bill from travelling.
Okay, it's hard for people to understand that now, isn't it? That when at the beginning when you were texting,
well, we take so much for granted these days, don't
Absolutely.
we live in a world that it's instant gratification.
Yeah,
you know, we talk about speeds in broadband, and I think that as a message itself is people still don't grasp that in terms of speed, I suppose, because we see it and we just expect it to be click of a finger, I suppose, really. Yeah. But I'll tell you an interesting story. Talk about broadband and the timescales. One of the businesses we bought out in Hull was Pure Broadband, and a particular guy called Alan Cheshire. I used to go to school with Alan, and when I first moved into my house in Hull, the one I'm living in now, which is over 20 years ago, Alan came down to fix my aerial. And the conversation was, after he fixed my aerial, I said, what are you doing these days, Al, apart from aerials? Anything exciting? He said, I'm going to go into the broadband market. I said, what the hell's broadband market? That was just 20 years ago.
Wow.
And 20 years on, we made him a wealthy man in terms of that. And he was a right rogue at school, by the way. So but that's a whole different story.
But there was a whole lot of early adopters who have really got ahead of this, haven't there? The people like the founders of Connexin, who jumped on it early enough to make sure that they were players in the market to make that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Connexin itself is a whole story within itself, I suppose. Every business, I think, has a story in terms of that. And I think when you look at Connexin's journey, and it's still on a journey when you look at it now and to where it is now from where it came from. Yeah, 2006 was when it was, I suppose, born. I suppose really if you look at that, and that sounds 19, 20 years ago, I suppose.
I mean, that's way ahead of the curve to start something like that.
Yeah, it is, and I think it stemmed from that little bedroom project, I suppose, where we talked about there. And I suppose if you look at the business itself, it started out as an internet service provider itself, and then just evolved over time, and then now it's evolved into, I suppose, I'm just having this conversation with Will at Doc Spears, and we're talking about data. We're a smart tech company now that produces data. I think if you look at Connexin now, it's the ISP side of it is part of the Connexin's makeup, but there's so much to the business as it is now because it's had to evolve with the digital world as we know it.
Well, I think that's a really interesting part of this sector because we used to be able to just talk about broadband lines and people imagine that's a line going into your house that's broad. I don't know. Anyway, a band.
What's broad about it?
That's going into your house or into your business. But there's so much more now to the digital market, the digital sector, that companies like yours really have to diversify into and be aware of, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you look at the business now, and albeit the broadband side of the business is still there. Obviously we built the business on the broadband market, I suppose. Being an internet service provider in Hull has helped us do that, I suppose, really. So you look at the investments that we've had on the back of being an internet service provider in Hull and have our own network, I suppose, it's brought us to where we are now. But I think from a business perspective, like most businesses, you've got to keep up to date really what's going on out there. But I think where we are now in terms of digital technology, IoT, the Internet of Things, which is a whole new ball game to a lot of people. I think you and I had a conversation several years ago, Mark, when you talked about when I was at Connexin the second time around, I came over with Alex and you wanted to know really what smart city is all about, I suppose. And it's like, well, what is it you want it to be, I suppose. And that's still the case for me. I think it's still early days in my eyes in terms of what we define as smart, and everybody has a different, I suppose, perception of smart and tech, I suppose, really, when it comes down to that.
And smart city. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's a really interesting thing. And you're right. You and I have had those conversations before, and we were talking about councils enabling rubbish bins in town to signal when they were full by using smart technology. Traffic lights I think they kind of do that in some of them to know when the different traffic build-up is happening. Those kind of things are really, it seems 10 years ago they were kind of, well, wouldn't it be nice if, but now they're almost, well, why aren't we doing that? The technology's available.
Absolutely. And I think, again, what we're trying to do is break down the barrier that there's a perception out there this is really costly to, whether it be local authorities or enterprises, and actually it isn't, because of technology itself has now evolved. So if I may just explain a little bit really about the different kind of tech, I suppose, out there from a broadband perspective. You have Connexin as we are an ISP provider, an internet service provider with our broadband fibre network, but we also have technology which is called LP1, which is low powered wide area network.
Okay, another acronym
another one you may have to get used to, but we use this facility to do exactly what you just said there. So where we engage with local authorities and councils and private organisations up and down the country, we will deploy this network, this LP1 network, which allows these sensors, the Internet of Things, to really submit data to, in essence, what we call a gateway, which is a device which sends and receives information, packets of data, which is then sent to a platform, a dashboard, whatever you want to call it, whether it be a local authority or an enterprise. So, and those sensors can be a multitude of things. So you mentioned smart waste, the smart lighting. We've got sensors that look for air quality, which looks at the conditions of the roads. We looked at room occupancy. We've got sensors. I'm just thinking off the top of my head with buildings, for example. We've got buildings that can detect damp and mold now. There's a whole menu, I suppose, of sensors.
And ever increasing.
So if you and I would have had this conversation, I think it was maybe 7-8 years ago with Alex, and we probably had maybe I don't know, for example, a few pages in the menu, I suppose, for sensors. Now you can have a sensor more or less for everything. But what those sensors do, it plays an important part to collect data so that companies and local authorities can make informed decisions.
And that's interesting, because from a public sector point of view, authority, you can see how the practical applications of managing a town centre or and the facilities and the infrastructure that's there is possible. But from a commercial point of view, you can imagine being able to have sensors that connect with people as they walk past their store, to be able to send them offers and say, well, before you walk past, we've got 50% off this. That's incredible. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that point where I think I just kind of we've done a bit more, but from a commercial point of view, I think people are having the impression that these are expensive deployments, which they're not.
Yeah.
The sensors don't cost a lot of money, shall we say. The transmitters are very cost effective, shall we say, in that respect as well. So when you look at deploying over a large area, it is quite a low cost effective facility.
You've just got to put the time in and learn.
It is, yeah, and there's a lot of planning involved, and you can imagine that we use these facilities with lots of line of sight because obviously transmit. So there's a lot of planning which goes on behind the scenes. Really, we don't just rock up and find the tallest building and put an antenna on top of there and hope for the best, I suppose. Really, but yeah, there's a lot more behind that. But these the sensors, they've got a lifetime battery of 10 to 15 years now as well. So you look at deploying such an infrastructure, it's there for some time, I suppose.
And it's relatively inexpensive then, as you said.
Absolutely.
That barrier is taken away. So there's I suppose what you're saying really, it's ready, it's ripe now for using. And you have to conclude that the early adopters, the retailers or the commercial who decide to use it first will be the ones that steal the march, because sooner or later they'll become commonplace and everyone will be using them. But if you're the first one... You get all the advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in particular, I think at this moment in time, Connexin have found a niche in the utility market, I suppose. So I think, for example, we've just got a recent contract with Northumbrian Water.
Right. And
I'll try and keep it in layman's terms as much as possible, but we've deployed this LP1 network over a large area. And this particular water authority was conscious of the fact that they've got a lot of leakages. So we've in effect made these dumb meters into smart meters just by applying sensors which will monitor the actual water pressure. So then that will obviously come back that kind of information and detect obviously if there's a decrease in that water pressure, which may indicate that because there's going to be a possible leakage, I suppose. So when you think something like that, that is crucial information being provided back to a point in question really to an organisation such as that, not only will it save them absolutely millions possibly in obviously lost water, but you've also got to now take into consideration the net zero challenge. So they're heavily compliant in terms of obviously what they've got to put in terms of KPIs, and if they don't meet those, then they're heavily fined. So by putting something in place like that, yes, there is a cost to that, but the overall cost against anything else is pretty minimal.
And that's so interesting, because if there was... We all know about the challenges of the water companies and challenges that they're providing for the rest of the community. But if more people spent as much time talking about how we can use things like AI and this digital age to fix some of our society's issues, rather than, or spend much time talking about that we do about worrying about it taking over the world and us being attacked by robots.
And I think that the IoT application can be used in various sectors. I mean, that's just one of them. We talked about utilities, but there's health, for example. You know, and we're obviously AI is playing an important part in everybody's life at the moment, whether we like it or not. I think it's the same old thing. I think when the internet first came along, people was a bit wary. What is it all about? You know, I suppose it is a generation thing, I suppose, but you know, we've had to embrace it. And I think it's the same thing with AI. It's fascinating. I think, it's a thing that we need to embrace as a species as well as a company, I suppose, really. But yeah, it's quite exciting time for Connexin in terms of that realm.
I can imagine. As you say, if you were there in 2006, then you're staying ahead of the curve when you're adopting that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it appears to me that I know that the provision of broadband was stage one, if you like, from Connexin's point of view. But that remains the enabler, doesn't it? If you haven't got strong, reliable connectivity for any business, if you haven't got that, you haven't got any connection to the rest.
No, and I think the actual demand of business, the demands of businesses now has gone through the roof, I suppose. Really, I mean, and I think when you look at the differences between residential and home,
Thank you. I want to ask about that. Why can I get really good broadband at home and I can't get it into my offices?
Well, I think you've got to look at the demand. I suppose when you look at the home, for example, now it is also used as an office. You talked about, we mentioned the pandemic, which seems a lifetime away, but it seemed only like yesterday to some. But that changed people's lives overnight, and it changed the way where we work to a degree. And I still think we're coming on the back of that still. So you look at shall we say, internet provision at home was just, yes, we've got it to open my laptop and download something and watch something on TV. That transformed that, I suppose, really. And so the actual demand, and now if you look at the average home, shall we say, you switch on the TV, you've got apps that you subscribe to. You've got Netflix, you've got Amazon, you've got Prime, you've got, list as long as my arm. So all these are streaming services now which take up data, which take up the internet. And you put a mix in there where you've got children, which are gaming now, crikey.
Yeah.
There's a whole new ball game, isn't it? And the gamers obviously want super fast broadband in the home, not just broadband, they want it fast.
Yeah.
So, and then you look at working from home. Wow. So to try and marry the kind of conditions you used to have at the office in the home, you're going to need broadband. So I think the demand has increased dramatically since COVID, I suppose. Answer your question, why? Is it, do you think it's better?
I want to come back to COVID.
I think internet service providers have probably prioritised homes more because of the demand. The demand has seen it increase. So, again, I'll give you an example. In Hull, we've just, not just recently, over a year ago, we took over a student accommodation company's internet service from our local our local competitor in Hull, Kcom. Not only did we provide a competitive package, but we was providing 500 meg initially. Now, these are students from wherever, and they're coming in and they're expecting it to be at least a gig.
At least.
Now, we've just upgraded to provide 2.5 gig.
Yeah.
Now, you imagine that.
Things are moving
it's just
fast,
mad.
Right? It's incredible.
So in the space of 5 minutes now, we've gone from 500 meg to a gig, to now recently, can we upgrade to some of the facilities to 2.5 gig?
You're speaking to someone who remembers having to unplug their phone in order to plug in the internet in my house. So I, the speed with which things have grown has been incredible. But I'm going to press you on this because it's been a bugbear of mine. Yeah. I still, as much as COVID was the case, and that created a demand.
Yeah.
I still don't understand when it's so business critical, when I look at the infrastructure of broadband in Grimsby or in Cleethorpes or in Scunthorpe, it's behind all the residential areas, but yet all businesses are sitting there going, we desperately need broadband to run our businesses, regardless of what kind of business we are. I don't know why that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a commercial side of it. Maybe, Mark, in that respect, like I said, there's certainly more demand from a residential perspective, as you can imagine from that. But I think residential versus commercial, there are the similarities, but I think when you look at the kind of expectations from a business, when some businesses really would like unlimited bandwidth, for example, so they don't have restrictions on what they download or upload, I suppose, really. So there's a condition you have to consider, I suppose, really. And then you've got to look at what we call contented or uncontended, I suppose. So businesses would like an uncontended service. Yeah. That they don't want anybody else to share that I suppose, that connectivity. You've got to pay for that. Whereas obviously you look at residential, where we'll bring fibre to a certain area, that's called contended, so it's shared. Yeah. So that may come into an issue where on peak times, for example, that you may see some latency or some issues. So I think you've got to balance it out, I suppose, really. But I think unfortunately it's a business world we live in. So I think the heart of the matter is it comes to a commercial.
And that makes sense because I've seen it in our own business sites where as we've built up our requirement, like past a gig. When people have been, businesses on our business park have been using it on a shared line. Have used it to download films, and so everybody else just goes, it just slows down. Exactly. Everybody else has done in the past until we improved it. So it's ever changing, and we have to get to it. Look, I'd like to go back to the pandemic because I think that seemed to be a massive turning point, not just for Connexin, which I imagine it was, but for the whole country. We suddenly leapt from this idea of, well, we can talk to each other over our PCs at home, and everybody went, oh, no, we couldn't possibly do that. It would never work. To suddenly, felt like a couple of weeks, that's exactly what we all had to do.
Absolutely.
And it became a thing. And I think Zoom was the beneficiary of that.
Oh, crikey, I had some real bad experiences. I don't know about you. When I came from I was furloughed for some time at that point, and coming into a world, for me anyway, was quite frightening to think, Well, I can't actually go and see somebody. I have to speak to somebody behind my laptop. And it's called Zoom. I'd never heard of Zoom or Teams. And my first 2 or 3 calls on Teams / Zoom or what, I can't remember now, but there was disasters. I was pressing the right, is my camera on? It was all over the place. And eventually we got used to it. But I think resilience came into that as well, from the businesses adapting very, very quickly. And when you look at a company like Connexin at the time, then they would have, which I wasn't there at the time, unfortunately, but I can imagine they would have had to respond to that in terms of requirements. So their demand for supplying, suitable connectivity to homes would have shot up massively, I suppose, really.
Well, it did seem to be that. And I can only imagine that the pressure on firms like yours was immense at that time, just at a time where you were also struggling to adapt and change the business model.
Yeah, there's no difference for us. We're in the same boat as you lot.
That's right. But yet we need that service. Someone said to me, it's now entered the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that when you food and water and a roof above your head and connectivity or broadband, it's now life critical, not just about
hugely. Business. When you think about that now, when you think obviously when you prioritise moving house, for example, you take things for granted, but certainly when you look at the broadband side of it as well, it's like that is a must. And again, you look at Connexin, you look at when we try and meet customers' needs. We've started some work with some property developers in Hull, and you look at that demand straight away. I came back and I challenged the team internally and said, look, we've got a local developer willing to give us a housing development as opposed to our friends at KCOM. What can we do that's different? I'd like to think that when a new resident moves into that house and he or she picks up those keys, they've got maybe toddlers in the background, or they have to work from home straight away. So how do we combat that challenge of connectivity straight away? And we've done that. So literally, it's fantastic news that when you pick up a key for a new house in this particular housing development, you pick up the welcome pack and you pick up your router, and you're literally moving from literally minute 1. You plug in your router and you're up and running. So then the kids can go upstairs and keep themselves occupied while mum and dad unpack, and it solves a lot of arguments, I suppose, really. But it goes back to that expectancy, I suppose, really, isn't it? And you look at that from a developer's perspective, it's one of those things that they've had to, I suppose, provide in the past, but now they're really looking at it actually how is that going to affect our business? So I took it upon myself that I wanted to enhance that customer experience. And when you look at that from day one, that straight away it ticks a massive box for that developer. So well done to Connexin on that one.
And that makes absolute sense, because I think if you are, it's no good being, this is something aside, broadband is something different, it's something added extra. If you start treating it as part of life's essentials when you're moving into a new home, and I agree. I'm just imagining if I moved into a new home and someone said, "Oh, we haven't sorted the broadband out yet," I'd be, "Well, why am I moving in?" So much it depends on that.
And we have these things called mobile phones these days, which we run our lives by, don't we?
Absolutely.
And yes, you can use that to a certain degree, but to me, that's a bit of a substitute. I think. We like to be there with our laptops open, I suppose, really, and that facility to work from home.
I mean, if I've got family all over the world and my kids are all over the country. If I haven't got ability to WhatsApp them at a moment's notice, not only will I be uncancelled, but my wife would have apoplexy not being able to contact them. So it's become such an important thing.
Yeah, I think it has become so critical, I suppose, in our lives that we can't live without it in that respect.
What do you think? I don't know if Connexin have or you personally have a view on the other side of that, because as we've become more connected, there's a lot of debate at the moment about how connected we are at every age, what we're putting into children's hands, cyber attacks, malware, all these things that are increasing as well. That's really a challenge for all of us. It's
an ongoing challenge for everybody, I think, really, in terms of we have a response. I have a 14-year-old daughter who's constantly on the phone. Like probably most teenagers out there that literally are bombarded every 5 minutes with whatever he or she's watching, I suppose, really. So I think we have a duty of care. Of course we do, I suppose, really, from being a parent and also being a company in that respect. But it is quite scary that you're hearing all sorts now, aren't you, really, in terms of accessibility for vulnerable people, etc., etc. So I think it's something which is being closely monitored. and obviously closely policed.
Yeah.
I think if that's the right word to use, I suppose.
No,
really.
it's right.
But-
And we all have to play a part in that, don't we? I suppose every
yeah.
company, every individual.
Absolutely.
It's not a thing that's happening to...
No, we can't ignore it. It's there. I think, going back to that time, a duty of care, as long as we put in the right measures in as much as we can, then, and abide by those kind of, like, I suppose, rules, one of a better word, then hopefully, by working together with everybody, I suppose, involved, then we should try and make it as safe as possible as we can be. Well, there's always going to be people out there that are hacking into this and hacking into that, God forbid, and stuff. We want to create havoc.
That's all. There's always been that.
Yeah, and I think, Mark, you can only do so much, I suppose, really, can't you? You're trying to keep ahead of the curve as much as possible, but there's always some clever bugger out there that finds a way to get around this firewall or whatever.
Absolutely. And I suppose the companies and organisations that are like Connexin, who have been ahead of the curve and remain so, we're kind of dependent on not just on Connexin, but firms of all types to stay ahead of those people all the time and to be able to deliver safe services to our homes and to our businesses. That must be a big.
I look at the roles that we've got Connexin now. I mean, crikey! I mean, when I first started with the boys in 2006, well, it was just after that, about 2008, I think, was my first stint, shall we say, with Facanal. There was 10 of us. There's over 200 now.
Wow!
And I couldn't name every employee within this business, and I do look at some of the titles that we have with certain people, but some of the roles that we have within the company. When you look at business intelligence and you look at data and you look at software development, crikey, it's like wow, So we are on those, I suppose, on that level where we're constantly striving to look at ways and means how we can improve, I suppose, and making sure that we're filling all the right gaps that we may have as a fast-moving business has.
But that is fast-moving to go from 10 to 200 people in a relatively short space of time.
It's strange, Mark. When I went back to Connexin this time round, and Fakan and I had a conversation about me coming back into the company and being a Hull lad, born and bred, obviously, and I've always kept in contact with the guys because it's just been one of those things. We've got a great relationship as far as friendship is concerned, but business is business. I have a role to do. But when I spoke to Fakan and Al about coming back into the business, and they told me really what they was up to, I suppose, where are we now? What stage at? And I went, crikey! And I think one of the first presentations I did was an internal presentation. And I said, I see Connexin at this moment in time. It's a bit of a fast moving rocket. You've got Fakan as an entrepreneur, quite rightly out there, 100 mile an hour, and you don't want to curtail that. You want him to do what he's best at.
Of course.
But he creates, I call it turbulence. One of a better word, that the kind of aftermath that is there from any fast moving business. And as a business, we are trying to catch up with that, I suppose, really. So part of my role in strategic partnership was to actually proactively challenge the status quo of certain things that we've been doing. So, and it's been quite simple things that what's been right as a policy or procedure maybe 2 or 3 years ago actually is not fit for purpose now, because we've got to review that because we're now this business, not that business, I suppose, really. So it's been like I said, when I presented at the LSIP before Christmas, it was fantastic when you put a timeline for the business from 2006 to present day, and those milestones from not just investment, but when we got the Wi-Fi contract for Hull, and then you looked at the actual rollout with the fibre network in 2021, I think it was those mission objectives which were met by when Fakan and Al sat down probably in the bedroom and said, Jesus, what we're going to do apart from this little project, we really want to break the monopoly of KCOM within our doorstep. And they did that in 2021 by actually launching their own full fibre network, which you look at that and you think, wow, yes, we needed funded for that to actually achieve that. But that's what the lads set out to do. And it was great to be part of that, I suppose, really, to make a change and give customers, like I'm a customer back in my own hometown, is choice as well, which people in Hull didn't have for some time.
That's a really quite an important story, because what you've described and how Connexin have approached it is the story of or the requirement of every business, really, because you've been in a changing environment. Connexin have been in a rapidly changing environment.
Yeah.
And you have to adapt. You have to change and swerve and go up and down. And your plan that was plan A is now plan A10 because you've had to diversify that many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look at Connexin from, so when it was first born, as an ISP provider, it's difficult. And for me, when I'm out there talking to new businesses and organisations, tell me about Connexin. And somebody said, "Oh, you need a strap line. That great marketing term. You need a strap line, an elevator pitch." It's a difficult one because when you look at Connexin and what it does, or what it comprises of, it's difficult to condense that.
Yeah.
And like I say, look at that kind of journey of the company from 2006 to present day. Wow, that elevator pitch, you'd be up and down like a yo, wouldn't you? But, so you look at it. I think it's safe to look at Connexin. You look at it. I think 3 bits, I suppose. So you've got the fibre network, the broadband. You've got the middle bit, I call it, which is the smart tech side of it. So actually smart places and the Internet of Things division, I suppose, the techie stuff. And then we've recently acquired a training academy to upgrade with digital skills. Right. So you look at those 3 components, I suppose, and there's obviously you can delve further into those components, I suppose. But when you look at us as a business, when you look at our competitors, yes, we have an element of an element of competition in Hull from the broadband capacity, but nothing else in terms of IoT and dare I say it, in terms of the academy as well, in terms of the trainings. And you've met with Adam from the academy, so you know very well about what we're doing there as well from that perspective. So yes, you look at that from all angles, I suppose, really, and it's a completely different company to when we first. Here's a little story for you. I was when we was having lunch the other week for my birthday and for Can's birthday. Was reminiscing as you do, and probably similar to this conversation we had today. From where did it start and to where it is now. And I said, crikey, lads. I said, do you remember that time when we first got the Princess Key Wi-Fi contract? Now that sounds in the day it was like, wow, we've got Princess Key. It's a shopping centre in Hull. It's Princess Key. Yeah. Wow. Look at it now, and it's like it'd be nothing. No disrespect to Princess Key, but when you look at the business and the contracts that we're in now, which are multi-million-pound contracts, Princess Key would be so what? It fascinates me to see that customer journey from that to where we are now, and we get a wow when we've won I think £60 million contract with Northumbrian Water. I think, that's big money, isn't it? You with things like that. So it's all part of a journey, Mark, isn't it?
Of course it is, and that kind of journey, as I say,
and we're continually evolving. So going back to your point there, how do we keep up to speed? Well, that's where we have Fakan, that's where we have Alex, where we have people at such a high level strategically, far above my pay grade in terms of that, who are designated to say, right, I call it horizon scanning, business intelligence.
And I think that really leads nicely into the next topic, because the things are moving so fast. They have been moving fast, and they continue to. So just looking at the 2 areas that you've mentioned, the Internet of Things, which is a rapidly evolving idea that was mentioned but now is just finding its feet, and we seem to be applying it. And skills. Skills has always been a challenge for here. And so the fact that Connexin have created an academy to answer that, I think that's really interesting. And again, I suppose that's the entrepreneurial side of both for Can and Alex in terms of the business side of it. Really, when we look at the business and how we're going to operate, I suppose, and every business has needs. And what was our needs? Our needs were that we needed more fibre engineers to deploy to build our network. So we promised the investors this, and how do we deliver it? Well, we need some guys to go out there and actually dig holes in the ground and put it in there. So we looked at that, and we looked at obviously what was behind that, and it just made perfect sense in terms of, well, why don't we just go and buy a business which has got those accreditations, has got those, have jumped all those, I suppose, milestones that we don't have to, I suppose, really. And then also on the back of that, we can bring along different courses, whether it's skill boot camps, apprenticeships, etc., in terms of developing our own staff internally and external organisations. So I think it's been a. I mean, that's when you look at it, does it add to the broadband and the Internet of Things as a business? Not really, but
it is complementary, I suppose, because it fits in with that, I suppose.
Well,
way.
I can imagine that in your business plan, like for a lot of businesses, nowadays, the one barrier or obstacle that's in the way of being able to deliver your plans, apart from finance, and that's always going to be, is people, because it always is going to rely on having people, resources to be able to deliver what you want to do, whatever your vision is. And so it's really quite entrepreneurial to say, well, I can't see it anywhere, so I'll just have to make it myself.
Yeah,
I mean,
that typifies them completely. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Completely made sense, really, when you look at it now.
And not everyone can start up an academy, but there is something in that ethos of, if you can't see it out there, you need to create some sort of training program, bring somebody in to make it happen for yourself.
Absolutely. And similar, I suppose, to the Internet of Things. When you look at the kind of marketplace which is out there, I suppose, really, when it's literally, as then started from quite embryonic, I suppose, really, when you look at the odd sensor or two, in basic in terms as it was to what it is now, and it's phenomenal, really. Where's it going to go? Your guess is as good as mine. Really,
well, I was going to ask you about what you think is the next big thing, because to give you a bit of thinking time, just to explain that, everyone can get it so right and so wrong. I remember talking to a very experienced business leaders. It must have been a good 20 years ago, some time ago now, and their thoughts were that it's longer than 20 years ago. Then that this internet thing was just a bit of a fad. Don't worry about it. And these were people very respected in their field. And you would have listened to them in the day. You would have gone, oh, phew, that's all right. Then we don't have to worry about that. We can all get it wrong. So I'm not asking you to predict an accurate future. But
thank God for that.
You'd be a millionaire if you could. But if you were, you've got a lot of insight now, and Connexin are at the head of the curve, as we've said a number of times in this podcast. So staying ahead of the curve, what would you advise? What do you think? If someone was thinking, what's coming up that I need to get alongside? What would you say to them?
Wow. Well, I think you can't ignore AI. You know, it's again, I think it's on that cusp, I suppose, really. You know, when you looked at something to the internet, I suppose, really, I think that's just been a natural evolvement, I suppose, really, when you think, actually, how else can how can you improve on that, I suppose, really, and how can you make, I think when you look at the Internet of Things and you look at smart technology, you look at technology in essence, if you strip it down to its basic, we're looking at technology to help our lives, I suppose. And I think you look at Connexin's mission statement, to connect the real world to a digital world. I think we are becoming a digital world, whether we like it or not. So it's not just the Internet of Things; it's in the house. You know, we're becoming a digital house, aren't we? You look at, going back to your question, 10, 15 minutes ago, why is residential being prioritised, I suppose, over commercial? When you look at your home now as well, you look at, you've got all these smart devices in the home. You've got cameras. You've got Ring doorbells. You've got sensors that put on the heating. You know, the kind of Hive apps and all. There's all sorts which evolve around technology, which is there to make our lives simpler. Easier. There's an argument for both on that, I suppose.
Of course.
Where's it going to go? I just think I've just got a feeling that AI is going to play it. I know it sounds really kind of like obvious, but I think AI is something that we've all got to be, I think, aware of. Weary, some people might say. You know, to what extent is that going to be involved in the IoT world? It's here, and I think it's how we incorporate AI to make that next stage, I suppose, when we look at evolving technology to making our lives
easier. Yeah, we all want that.
Yeah, we all want
life easier.
But again, we go for that back where the expectations then, isn't it? We've built it to a level of that. It's like when the internet goes down at home, you know, or wherever, isn't it? You know, you go walk into an office, or straight away you're expecting to be on the internet. And if you haven't got the internet, what's going on? You know, it's that. So,
well, it's quite. I always think that our expectations were built up too high and too quickly with regards to the internet. Because when the internet was first coming on, even pre-Google, people were talking about something similar to the Internet of Things. Oh, you'll be able to tell your fridge what They were talking about that way before AI was even a word or a phrase. So our expectations were quite high, and so we got frustrated. But I think for the first time, it feels our expectations are being met, and actually, there's more possible than we can possibly imagine.
Yeah,
now.
I agree with you. The expectations being met and some, I suppose, really. And it's so. What I'm trying to say, Mark, I think it's difficult for me to say where do I think it. I'm excited in a lot of ways, but I'm also a bit weary as well. You know, and I'm in this industry, I suppose, really, and I'm looking at it from my perspective, thinking, I get it, but you know, just as long as it's
positively critical.
Positive, that's the thing, isn't it? Really, you know, because I think it can be used in all sorts of manners, I suppose, really, like most things can.
Yeah, and that's a good way of looking at it. I think what you're saying that we should now be thinking not of what does it do, but what do I need it? What do I need some help with? What will make my life easier? What will make my job easier, more efficient? Now, is there anything out there that can help me do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a real step change in the way we look at
absolutely.
digital.
And I think going back to the Internet of Things, that's probably why we're looking at the way we are, I suppose, really, when the organisation approaching a Connexin.
Yeah.
You know, how can we make these decisions better?
Yeah.
You know, more informed. Well, it is about collection of data.
Yeah.
And how do we do about that? And go back to that question about, well, we can set up this and it provides you that. Oh wow, you know, and then it's that. Then I suppose makes life easier for that organisation to meet whatever is coming their way, whether it's net zero or whether it's they've got to meet certain KPIs for investment. There's all sorts of. I mean, it's just endless, I suppose.
Yeah.
In one way.
Yeah, and we will always need to have. It can't be the Wild West out there. We've got to have people who know the stuff.
Yeah.
Because the way I from as a layperson, I mean, I look at AI and all aspects of digital and the Internet of Things, and to be frank, I haven't got a clue where to start because you look at what's available and everything excites me about it. I think, well, I want to try. And it's a bit like a sweet shop, really. I want to try everything, but a lot of them aren't going to do you any good. They're just so it's really finding the right kind of guidance. And I suppose companies like Connexin are going to be the guides in the end. Someone's going to have to come and say, this is my business. What do I need for that business? That's
right, yeah. And again, going back to, I think you and I had this conversation a while ago, Matt, when we said about, smart cities. You know, what's your definition of smart?
Yeah.
You know, what's your definition of digital, for example? You know, so I think somebody said about making Grimsby digital.
Yeah.
And what does digital mean? Is it an app?
Yeah.
Is it a website? Is it digital can mean numerous things, I suppose. Really. But until you actually drive down, I suppose, what the requirements are, I suppose, what are the pain points? I suppose, one of a better word. Then you can actually define and focus more really on a solution.
But again, that's business, isn't it? We've always done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are the problems? Where are the pain points, as you say? Yeah, let's find a solution for them.
And more often now, it's so how do we use technology to alleviate those pain points, and how do we then overcome that? Then that brings the next stage, doesn't it? Because there's always problems further down the line, which are forthcoming, I suppose, really. Yeah. So I think we're at that stage where I agree with you. It's shot ballistically, hasn't it? Really, over the last 10, 15 years, and to where we are now, and I still think there's more to come. Obviously.
Okay, so on that, I'm going to ask you the last question now. And I need you to the next 10 years, right?
Yep.
Forgetting about everything else going on, but the next 10 years in our digital world, have we got a lot to look forward to, or have we got a lot to be scared of?
You're asking Gary Clark as Gary
I'm
Clark?
asking Gary Clark.
You're asking Gary Clark. Bit of both, I would think, personally. Right. I think I look at some of the stuff, for example, that Connexin are doing, excites me, of course, being in this industry, and I can see the relevance of it, and I can see the importance, I suppose, really, and the good that it's doing. My fear, personally, is that other side, which we mentioned a while ago, and especially when you do have children, you look at things, what go on behind the scenes, I suppose, really. And it's that, I suppose, it's as long as it's in the right hands, and how it's used, I suppose, appropriately, shall we say. And again, that probably takes it down to another rabbit hole, or into how define appropriately, define this, that, and the other, whatever, I suppose. But my only concern is as long as it's used for the good, I suppose.
That
really.
sounds sensible to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. Not that you want to be out there and use it for any sort of unintentional bad purposes, I suppose, really. But there are people out there that unfortunately will use that technology for not so much nice things, I suppose. Really.
Well, there's a bright side and a dark side to everything.
I was just about to say, I think there's good and bad on every side, really.
Yeah.
But I think from what I've seen, from what I've experienced, being back at Connexin and the last couple of years in terms of the projects that we've been doing and the technology that's been applied, and I'm literally on an actual boot camp myself with work. We've put our own little IoT boot camp together. It's all about LoRaWAN and IoT and whatnot. It's been fascinating. So I've learned an awful lot really about the actual technology itself and how it's applied and the compliance side of it and the security side of it and how we deploy networks. So it's been fascinating. So, and that kind of excites because there is a world out there that you think, wow, you know, to make a nice, safe environment, and I use that word safe loosely, I suppose, really, because we all have a different idea of safe, don't we? I suppose, really, you know.
And there's a lot of fear of the unknown, and I think what you've really articulated throughout this is that this is we're at the beginning. We're at the early days.
So. Yeah, absolutely. I know it's been around for years now, but I still think we're very much at the beginning of a journey, which
that makes it exciting.
I'd dare anybody to sit here and predict the future when it comes to technology, I suppose. Really. Yeah. As I say, go back to many years ago, if you said to somebody you would carry a device around in your pocket, which is really a computer, which can literally reach the end of somebody in Australia or whatever, you think, what? You know?
No, I saw that before on Star Trek when I was very young.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's fine.
I get it. Yeah, beat me up.
we're not far away from
that
teleportation.
No.
Look, this has been really interesting, and I think
I hope so.
For all of us, I think it's great to hear from somebody who is at the cutting edge of delivery of this type of tech and this understanding of the digital world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot for us to take away from it. Just simply on the idea that we're not to be scared of it, but you can't ignore it, and you can't just go in thinking it's going to be the panacea for everything. And I'm really grateful to you for that, because I think it'll set a lot of people's mind on determining what they're going to do for the future.
I hope so, mate. Like I said, I think at the end of the day, we've just got to look at it with an open mind.
Yeah.
I always do. Whatever I get involved in, whether that's a business, whether it's meeting somebody for the first time, I go in with an open mind to find out where it takes me. And life is a journey, isn't it? As we know, regardless of who you work for, I suppose, really. But I think there's a lot of excitement out there.
Okay.
But I understand there's a lot of intrepidation out there. That bit of
when you said life is a journey, I'm going to stop now because you might break into song any minute, and I need to I have to make sure that doesn't happen.
No problem.
My podcast. Gary, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Matt.
Good stuff.